sure it's high. Okay, and go.
You say good morning?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Good morning. My name is Chief Brady O'Watch. I am from Carry the Kettle, also we known as Chegakin First Nation.
Okay, do you remember what you first thought when you heard about the coronavirus?
Well, I overseen a lot of the some of the news that was happening down across the coast there, and I was thinking just about what could come about it if it was to come overseas, because most often viruses like the H1N1 came over, and it hits really home for me because my two young boys were they caught H1N1. So for me to be aware of different viruses that came, I knew I needed to be ready for it, not only for my First Nation but for my own personal family. So I took a lot of watched it over the news and everything, asked questions. When I started seeing that it was starting to come over, I started making preparations that I knew that we had to keep this out, not only for my own personal family, but my community as well, because as a chief, it's your responsibility to take care of all of your members, whether it's urban, on reserve, wherever they may be. You have to be able to step up and take care of your membership.
Okay. When did your life start to change as a result? In what ways did your everyday life change?
Yes, Chief.
Yeah, as chief, as...
Oh, yeah. Well, when I was, but prior to being chief, I was working different jobs. I was doing mostly healthcare and different social work jobs, and I started to explore doing my graduate studies in business, and I was going on that route, and I was asked one time by one of my relatives, one of my older relatives who has passed on, late Frida. She's actually approached me and asked me why I don't run for chief, and I just said I didn't know, because that was a huge step for me, and it's something I needed to consult with people for. And as I guess word got out that I was pondering on it, and I was called one time. There's about 3 or 4 elders one time, and they reached out to me and asked me if they could meet me at our elders lodge on the First Nation. So I took it upon myself, invitation. I went out there, and then they started talking to me about running as chief. So I knew I was going to come across a lot of hurdles being at a younger age, and coming across a lot of the other politicians who are almost double my age. And it's something that it changed my outlook on how I viewed what a chief is. Because for me, a chief doesn't necessarily have to be old. I know that from my own experiences, that my dad used to talk to me about how a chief was groomed from a young age. They were the ones that possessed the most, I guess, best characteristics, and the most selfless. And my dad always said, a chief of a First Nation was the one of the tribe that had the least possessions, and because he always put his membership first. So just a lot of those kind of characteristics, it really changed my life, because growing up on that idea mindset of what a chief should be, I kind of had to change myself, my life, to try and fit how a chief should be from my recollection, from my teachings. So it just changed my outlook. It kind of, in a way, accelerated my growth as a man. So that's kind of how it changed me. It accelerated my growth. It made me think more selfless. I started putting people ahead of myself, and I embraced it as best as I could. At the end of the day, I was always told, if an older person or someone asks you to do something, you do it, because they have some belief in you. So it's kind of what was kind of like my mindset and how it changed me.
So do you think, like, your role as chief during this pandemic, do you think things have changed a bit, or do you think, like, your role is a bit the same, or because this whole pandemic and it's put on people, do you find any changes?
So the pandemic on my nation, anyways, where a lot of them are really compliant. They understand when I speak about just protecting our children and our elders. Like, as First Nations people, we're very family oriented. We're very family conscious. So when I start talking about, well, we have to do this for the sake of our vulnerable ones, a lot of my membership, they understood. They get it. They understood. They said to me, we agree, we support this decision. And so I had a lot of compliances and a lot of good things. So just in some sense, I had, well, in anything that you do, you had a little bit of bad apples, but at the end of the day, it was the older ones that kind of stepped up and put their foot down, which helped me. Mm-hmm.
How did your community respond to the virus?
So, which is actually kind of good about this whole thing was our water treatment plant actually burned down. So we had a emergency response preparation plan already prior to this happening. So our treatment plant burned down. Again, I was a very newly elected chief. I went through a learning process of how to reach out, declare our state of emergency, reach out to resources, reach out to community members, look for other funding sources. That's what I learned from when our treatment plant burned down. So when this pandemic happened, I kind of applied a lot of our emergency preparedness, and it kind of came out through that as well. So we were ready for it, and that's something that I've always told my council as well, was we have to be ready for this virus, and we had to be prepared for it. So automatically we had that old forestry farm, the PFRA that the band has a heating and cooling place there. So we were able to store large amounts of food there. So we were able to buy a lot of product in bulk and store it there, go out and deliver to membership. I mean, we never kept it to just on reserve. Mm-hmm. Of course, we have to think about our urban members. Growing up urban myself, I understand the struggle, what it's like to have struggles living out in an urban setting. And so I ensured that our old ones and the ones that are not financially stable, that they were accommodated as well. So in a way, I was always telling my membership, actually, when I was talking with a lot of them, was what's sad about these things like these pandemics, even though it's a tragedy, still, it brings us together. It brings us all together. It took us away from urban setting. It took us away from a lot of these things we rely on, like the bars, whatever people rely on, whatever. It made us stay at home. It made us appreciate something that we lost before, which is the concept of being together with family and being as one.
And how have you coped with the changes brought by the pandemic, like in terms of have culture, heritage, traditional knowledge, and traditional practices made a difference in your life during this time? If so, how?
So, growing up with my family is very traditional. They're very knowledgeable. So my dad, from such a young age, taught me how to basically smudge, prayer. Taught to me about how we deal with things, how we we have a sense of an outlet. We don't fill our bottle up, as my dad would say. We find a way to let off a lot of our stress, whatever it may be, by smudging, talking with elders, and just understanding that, understanding of what each barrier is. And my dad always told me, he said, and what always sticks with me is, my dad said, the Creator would never put you in a place that you couldn't get out of. And he would never put you in a position that you couldn't find a solution to. So I always think about it all the time when I find myself frustrated and I find myself in a sense of trying to find some type of answer. I think back to my old ways, my dad's teachings, my grandpa's teachings. I think about what they said to me about how I need to carry myself. So a lot of it is just, I guess, oral teachings. I give an example of this when I talk to my membership. I always say, as a young boy, I remember my dad telling me the same stories over and over again. He said, I was telling my dad, I don't know why you keep telling me the same story. I don't get it. I know what you're trying to say. And I said, no, till you're a man, you're gonna sit here, you're gonna listen to all my stories over and over again. And I did all the way till I was 18. I never got it until I became an adult, went out into the world, and I get it today. And what's good about it is I can recollect every word that he said. And those are the same things that I teach my kids.
What lessons for the future may come out of this experience for you during this pandemic, like your family, your community, society as a whole?
Repeat the question.
What lessons for the future may come out of this experience for you, your family, your community, society as a whole from this whole pandemic?
So a lot of stuff that I've learned personally was just appreciating family, appreciating your loved ones, because you've seen through news, through media outlets, a lot of families are losing their loved ones to this pandemic. They're reaching out on news saying, appreciate your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your son. This is real. This is happening. It makes me go home at the end of the day, appreciate my loved ones, appreciating what I do have. My dad always told me when his dad was old, he said, be there for your parents, respect them, visit them. Even if you go by and say hi, appreciate that. So I just teachings like that and things, it makes me appreciate my own family and stop, looking elsewhere for whatever. Just being at home with your family is key. For my community, same thing. I pass the same, how I present myself as a man to my family is how I treat my community. My community is my relatives, they're my aunties, they're my uncles, they're my cousins, they're my brothers, my sisters, and I always tell it to all of my membership is, you're my brother, you're my sister, you're my auntie, my uncle, we're all family. Regardless, however you may be, we're all related in some sense. So I always tell them, go and check on your mom, go check on your dad, go check on these people, go tell them you love them. You may not touch them, but at least vocalize that to them, call people, remember our teachings, go out and garden, just appreciating what we have at home. Because if you look out in the world, people are starting to look at First Nations, as unceded territory, right? They're looking at it as kind of like organic like places, because our crops, our trees and everything aren't polluted by all these fertilizers. They're just staying. We have trees there and everything, so people are actually appreciating being on the reserve. So it makes us, in any sense, my dad always said, appreciate what you do have, even if you have just a little bit, still appreciate it. So I always tell my membership is, what happened to the water treatment plant, we all came together. When I actually went and spoke out in Saskatoon for the Saskatoon water treatment plant, and I told everyone at that community, I said, that wasn't something that I did. This whole thing isn't because of me. I said, when this whole pandemic happened, yes, it was me who reached out for emergency, state emergency, but it was the women. When this whole thing was happening, all our older women in our community all came to our community hall. They started cooking, bringing food. They started bringing clothing. They started looking after everybody, and it blew me away. My dad always talked about how important women are, how they're healers. How they're the backbone of the community, and that's true. That was a fine example of that, of how our women came together and looked after everybody. So it just, just appreciating those teachings, appreciating those things. So it made me very wise, conscious, and made my community more aware of what our value system should be and how we value ourselves, how we value our women, how we value our families.
Okay, so talking about families, because of the whole isolation, the quarantine thing, how have you contacted your family, your friends?
So a lot of it is done through phone, again, technology. A lot of it be doing through FaceTime, we go through telephone, we have Facebook, we have different social media outlets. So a lot of it was done through that. For my sake, when I was away, or if I couldn't see my family, we would FaceTime, just that little bit of phone calls here now and then. I tease my mom all the time. So I'd reach out to her, bug her, say, how are you today? Or, are you out planting your garden yet? Just checking up on them. That's how I did a lot of my reaching out. It was just, again, meetings wise, it was Zoom, it was teleconference calls. Just again, it was my priority to ensure that no one was able to, whatever they did was, they kept the community safe. So it just made me very conscious to use technology in other ways, and we actually had a color system where we'd have security going around to different houses, and the people, if they're safe, the green would be there. They needed something, it was blue. So we just had that color coordination, that we'd have our security go out and check on houses, just so we can, have that extra extra person there looking out. But I always told everybody on social media was, check on your neighbor. Whether it be saying hi from a distance, whether it be calling a phone call, just reaching out where we can, reaching out in some sense. So that's what it was.
Okay. And just one more question. Like, you guys had security right on your community. So do you think that kind of helped, like, from the virus kind of going into your community, and were people like okay with having that?
Yeah. Well, at first it was kind of, again, a lot of it, people like to leave, and I just kind of explained about why we're doing it for it. And so a lot of them understood. I guess, like I said previously, it was just they got it. They understood why I was doing it. The people who had the issue were the ones who were passing through, which were the truck drivers and some people. But I told them, you can go through, but you can't stop anywhere. I'll actually have one of my security follow you to make sure you go all the way to the other side of reserve. And I had to stop every time. I didn't care. You had to stop every single time. Give your name, where you're going, where you're coming from, and everything. I said, regardless of who you are. So a lot of truck drivers actually chose to just drive around my reserve, which is actually a lot of relief on my part. But it actually slowed a lot of traffic down. We have a lot of houses down by the main road, so with less dust. So it was good. It was actually really good. We still have it on right now. Again, people, like I said, people understand. They get it. They understand why it's there for. And that's why I'm proud of my membership. I said every single time I make a public post, I always say I'm very proud of my First Nation and how we handle this pandemic.
Okay. Was there anything that you'd like to add to this interview?
I'm just I always say, I always tell everyone when it comes down to this pandemic is just, it's being patient. It's understanding why there's a purpose behind everything. There's reasons why things happen, whether it be, our mother nature's sick, whatever it may be, because, we look at the pollution in this world. We look at what we're doing to her. She's our mother. We have to take care of, like we as First Nations people, we're keepers of the land. Mother Nature, we understand that whole relationship between us and everyone else. So it's just, like I said, like, it may not, as long as we can change ourselves, as long as we give that respect, we now may not be much of the world, but at least as individuals we can carry ourselves in that manner. So it's just, I used to always tell people, just be patient, and things will happen. Things happen for a purpose, and we just have to let that carry through. So I just want to say that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And today is July the 2nd.